Have you ever just, stopped and wondered about the ways our biology might shape our minds, our behaviors?
Or maybe you've thought about that classic nature versus nurture debate, right?
Yeah.
And how it really applies to, well, us.
Exactly. It's a huge question. And today we're diving deep into sex differences in psychology.
Yeah, and this isn't just some abstract topic. It touches everything. Personality, emotions, how we learn.
How we experience mental health. It's everywhere. And it can be, well, pretty complex.
Definitely. So our mission today is to unpack some of the most important findings, maybe some surprising insights too.
We're drawing heavily from a really comprehensive source for the Wikipedia article on sex differences in psychology.
It's great, actually. Pulls together decades of research into one place, makes it accessible.
So we'll look at where differences pop up, the history behind the research, and crucially, that tangled web of biology, development, culture, all of it.
Get ready for some moments, hopefully.
Yeah.
They should leave feeling pretty well informed.
Okay, let's jump in. First off, what exactly are psychological sex differences?
Good starting point. We're basically talking about observable patterns, differences in emotion, motivation, or cognition between males and females as groups.
Like why certain feelings might be reported more often by women or certain behaviors by men on average.
Exactly. And it's really vital here to distinguish sex from gender. It's a common point of confusion.
Right. Sex usually points to the biological side, chromosomes, hormones, anatomy.
Whereas gender relates more to the environmental, the cultural stuff, social roles, expectations, masculine or feminine traits.
But separating them in real life, that's the tricky part. They're so intertwined.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And gender itself, it's often seen as those characteristics a society links to a biological sex. Plus, some cultures recognize non-binary genders too, which adds another layer.
This whole area isn't new, thinking about these differences, but scientifically. Charles Darwin got the ball rolling.
Yeah, back in 1859, on The Origin of Species, he suggested psychological traits could evolve through sexual selection, just like physical ones.
And he really dug into it later in The Descent of Man, applying it specifically to humans.
Right. But the field really exploded, you could say, in the 1970s. That was a huge period for gender studies.
We saw a flood of research. Textbooks like Women and Sex Roles, Gender and Communication.
And even earlier, Eleanor McCobie's work in '66, The Development of Sex Differences, was foundational, looking at hormones, social learning, cognition.
Then John Money's book in '72, Man and Woman, Boy and Girl, that one stirred things up.
Oh, definitely. His theory that social environment was more critical than genetics for gender identity
became hugely controversial, especially after the David Reimer case. It really highlighted the complexities and the ethical minefields.
A very difficult situation.
Yeah.
By '74, though, with the psychology of sex differences, the thinking started shifting again.
Oh.
Well, researchers began finding maybe men and women behave more similarly than people thought, and that kids actually have agency, power over their own gender role development.
Okay, so let's pivot to personality traits. The big five: neuroticism, extroversion, openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness. That's a common framework, right?
It is. And cross-culturally, we see some patterns. On average, women report higher neuroticism, agreeableness, warmth, openness to feelings.
While men, again, on average, report higher assertiveness and openness to ideas.
But, and this is crucial, the overlap is massive. We're talking population averages, not destiny for any individual.
Right. Any given woman can be less neurotic than most men. Any man more agreeable than most women. These are just tendencies.
Exactly. Now, here's a really surprising finding. Something that seems counterintuitive.
Okay.
These gender differences in personality, they're actually largest in prosperous, healthy, and get this, egalitarian cultures.
Wait, really? You think more equality would mean fewer differences?
You would, wouldn't you? But the research suggests it's because men in those highly developed regions tend to score lower on neuroticism, extroversion, conscientiousness, and agreeableness compared to men elsewhere.
Huh. And women's scores are more stable across regions?
Pretty much, yeah.
mean-
So the average man's profile shifts in those egalitarian places, creating a bigger gap with the average woman's more consistent profile.
Wow. Okay, that's unexpected. Let's look at some specific traits then. Machiavellianism.
Right. So males, on average, score higher here. That means being more emotionally cool, maybe manipulative, egoistic. And men are overrepresented at the very high end of that scale.
And narcissism.
That's another robust finding. Men consistently score significantly higher, especially on aspects like entitlement and authority. A big meta-analysis confirmed this pretty strongly.
Okay. And other general tendencies.
Males average higher in assertiveness and self-esteem. Females average higher in extroversion, anxiety, trust, and tender-mindedness or nurturance.
What about things like career interests? Using that RI-SIC model.
Yeah, the Holland codes. Men tend to prefer things-oriented work, realistic investigative fields. So engineering, science, math interests are stronger on average.
And women lean more towards people-oriented work.
Generally, yes. Artistic, social, conventional fields.
All right, let's shift gears to emotion. How do reported experiences differ?
Studies often show women report greater intensity for both positive and negative emotions. More joy, love, but also more embarrassment, guilt, sadness, anger, fear.
But men report more pride.
More frequent and intense pride, yeah, that's one exception often noted.
And fear, especially in certain situations.
Right, like imagining a stranger approaching home, women typically report greater fear, specifically about potential male aggression. Also, emotional contagion women seem more responsive to others' emotions.
But there's that difference between feeling it inside and showing it, right? Experience versus expressivity.
Exactly. That's key. Some research suggests men might have stronger physiological responses to anger, triggers their bodies react intensely.
But women might show it more outwardly.
Often, yes. Studies like Anne Kring's found women tend to be more facially expressive for both positive and negative emotions, so they might express more even if the internal experience level is similar.
That's a subtle distinction, and context matters too.
Definitely. When there are no strong situational rules for how to act emotionally, gender norms often kick in as the default.
And there are even biological differences, like with tear glands.
Yeah, anatomically different, plus women have higher prolactin levels. This might explain why, although crying is similar around age 12, by 18, women report crying about 4 times more than men.
Interesting. Okay, what about empathy, understanding others' feelings?
The general finding is that women tend to demonstrate more empathy, scoring higher on tests of emotional interpretation, like reading facial expressions.
But it's not always cut and dry.
No, some argue perceived differences might sometimes be about motivation, how empathetic someone wants to seem, especially if the test isn't explicitly about empathy.
So, nuance again. What about specific types of recognition?
Well, while women might be better overall at recognizing emotions from faces, men seem slightly better attuned to specific cues like anger, aggression, or threat signals.
And cognitive empathy, like that reading the mind in the eyes test.
There's a small but significant female advantage there. Overall, females tend to have an edge in nonverbal emotional recognition.
And this shows up early.
Apparently, yes. Observable from birth, consistent across the lifespan. Brain studies even show differences, stronger female brain responses to seeing suffering, higher activity in social situations.
And structural differences, gray matter.
Yeah, larger gray matter volumes in areas linked to those mirror neurons, which are thought to be crucial for empathy.
Which ties into that evolutionary idea, the primary caretaker hypothesis.
Exactly. The idea that prehistoric females, being primary caretakers, might have faced stronger selective pressure to be attuned to nonverbal cues for child rearing. Males maybe didn't face that same pressure. It's a hypothesis, but it fits some data.
Okay, let's tackle aggression. This is a big one in the research, right?
One of the most robust and oldest findings, yes. Males, as a group, are generally more likely to display aggression than females.
But again, the why is complex. Social factors, gender expectations, they play a huge role.
Absolutely. Aggression itself is tied up in cultural ideas of masculine and feminine. And when studies control for provocation give people a clear reason to be aggressive, those sex differences shrink quite a bit.
So gender norms are definitely influencing expression.
For sure. Still, even with that, males across ages show more physical and verbal aggression on average. Females show a small tendency towards more indirect aggression, like gossip, rumors.
And unprovoked aggression.
Males are more likely there too, especially physical aggression.
Yeah.
Even in cyberbullying, males generally show more. Though there's an interesting flip in mid-adolescence where girls might cyberbully more before boys overtake again later.
And this connects to crime rates.
It does. Males commit more crime, especially violent crime. The testosterone link is often discussed, though it's complex. Most studies find a modest link between testosterone and adult criminality, antisocial behavior, alcoholism, but it's less clear-cut for juvenile delinquency.
Physically, we see differences too, right? Dimorphism.
Yeah, in species with lots of male competition, males are bigger. Humans have modest overall differences, but bigger gaps in upper body muscle mass, and male skeletons are more robust, especially the face.
And theories for why. Hunting, fighting.
Both are proposed. Intraspecies aggression might explain some features better than hunting, like, say, beards or targeting ability. It's
Yeah.
debated.
Okay, let's shift to ethics and morality. Are there different compass points?
Research suggests tendencies, yeah. Women often lean towards a care-based morality, focusing on relationships, avoiding harm. Men lean more towards justice-based, emphasizing fairness, rights, rules.
And that relates to dual process theory, utilitarian versus deontological.
Right. Men show slightly more utilitarian thinking, greatest good for greatest number, even with some harm. Women show more deontological thinking, focusing on duties, rules, rejecting harm. This seems linked to women's stronger average effective response to harm.
Women also report greater moral sensitivity.
Generally, yes. And using moral foundations, theory, care, fairness, loyalty, authority, purity, women consistently score higher on care, fairness, and purity across many cultures.
Loyalty and authority differences are smaller.
Small and variable, yeah. But here's that surprising pattern again.
Let me guess the differences are larger in individualistic, Western, gender-equal cultures.
You got it. Same pattern as with personality traits. Really makes you think about how culture interacts with these things.
Definitely. Okay, cognitive traits, how our minds process information. This area has some challenges, right? Publication bias.
Yeah, that's a known issue. Studies finding differences might get published more easily than those finding none. But where differences are found, they're usually seen as a mix of social and biological factors.
And these aren't just appearing at puberty.
No evidence suggests earlier, like young boys being better at targeting or mental rotation, young girls better at recalling word lists.
Okay, let's talk memory specifically. It's mixed territory.
It can be inconsistent, yeah. But general trends. Females often excel in episodic memory, remembering events, access memories faster, use more emotional language when recalling, and do better on random word recall, semantic, and autobiographical tasks.
And men.
Men might be more likely to recall the gist rather than specific details. They also tend to recall more factual info, like from childhood, and show stronger spatial memories, using mental maps, knowing cardinal directions.
Whereas women use landmarks more for navigation.
Often, yes. And interestingly, for women, the hormone estradiol can influence learning and memory by promoting nerve tissue growth. Though menopause brain fog seems more related to stress and neural networks than just estradiol drop.
Okay, intelligence. Always a tricky, controversial topic. What's the current understanding?
Well, a key finding is that males show a wider range of performance on many IQ test components like quantitative reasoning, spatial visualization, spelling, general knowledge, more men at the very top and the very bottom.
But average IQ scores.
Differences there are small, inconsistent. And crucially, as the APA noted back in '95, most standard IQ tests are actually designed to eliminate overall score differences between sexes.
So no difference in general intelligence, or G.
Largely, no. Arthur Jensen found that in '98, and it's been reinforced since. But males do tend to excel on some specific factors, females on others.
Which specific ones?
Females generally show an advantage in verbal fluency, vocabulary, reading comprehension, speech production, writing.
And males?
Advantages tend to appear in spatial tasks, visualization, perception, and especially mental rotation, imagining objects turning in space.
And what influences these? Is it all innate?
Definitely not. Stereotype threat is a big one. Just reminding someone of their gender before a test can affect performance on tasks. Stereotype for the other gender.
Environment too, like video games and mental rotation.
Exactly. That correlation exists. And training studies show playing video games can reduce that male advantage in mental rotation. It's malleable.
Culture seems huge here too, like math ability preferences varying by region.
Right. And in more gender-equal countries, some traditional math gaps disappear, really highlighting societal influence. There was also a big 2021 review by Lise Elliott and others suggesting minimal overall differences beyond brain size adjustments.
What about cognitive control, self-regulation?
A 2011 meta-analysis found women have small but consistent advantages in punishment sensitivity and effortful control across cultures.
And impulsivity.
A 2014 review suggested women might discount future rewards more steeply, so less impulsive choice, but differences in impulsive action are less clear, varying by task and group studied.
Okay, let's move into behavior and mental health. Starting with childhood play. Differences seem pretty obvious there.
They often are. Gender roles link strongly to play. Boys often develop better object control skills after a certain point.
Is it learned or innate? What does the research say?
Well, there's evidence on both sides. The nature argument points to studies like one where even infants seem to prefer gender-typical toys Girls looking longer at dolls, boys at trucks.
Suggesting some innate preference.
Possibly. But the nurture side is strong too. Research on girls with CAH, who have high prenatal androgen exposure, found they weren't necessarily rougher in play than unaffected girls.
So socialization matters a lot. Parents, peers.
Hugely important, yes. How kids are treated, what's encouraged. It shapes sex-typed play significantly. That interplay again.
Okay, sexual behavior. Theories abound here.
They do. And most predict men, on average, will be more approving of casual sex and more promiscuous.
The evolutionary or sociobiological take focuses on parental investment, right?
Yes. Women's higher investment, eggs,
Right.
pregnancy, birth, makes them theoretically more selective. Men's investment via sperm is lower. Testing this in modern society is hard, though.
What about other theories? Neoanalytic?
They often focus on early attachment to the mother. Girls maintain it, define identity relationally. Boys might reject it for a masculine identity. This might predict women favoring sex in committed relationships, maybe linked to historical economic dependence.
And sexual strategies theory.
That's Buss and Schmidt's evolutionary idea about different male-female strategies for short-term versus long-term mating, depending on goals and context.
Social learning theory emphasizes observation and reinforcement.
Right. Learning sexual attitudes from parents, media, getting rewarded or punished for gender-typical behavior. This predicts changes over time with social norms.
And social role theory, linking attitudes to societal roles.
Yeah, suggesting male sexuality gets tied to individual pleasure, female sexuality more to relationship quality based on traditional roles.
What about the ovulatory shift hypothesis? Does fertility affect preferences?
That's pretty contested now. Meta-analyses find little evidence, or maybe only for short-term attraction, or depends on relationship status. A recent big study found no link between fertility and sociosexual desires. So, probably not a major factor.
But sexual regret shows clear differences.
Very clear, yes. Women regret past short-term sexual actions much more than inaction. Men regret sexual inaction slightly more than action.
Specific regrets differ too.
Yeah. Women often regret losing virginity to the wrong partner, unsafe sex. Men regret not being more adventurous, being too shy. It strongly suggests evolved differences in how we process sexual decisions and outcomes.
Moving to mental health. Overall rates are similar, but the types of disorders differ.
That's the key pattern. Men have higher rates of externalizing disorders, conduct disorder, antisocial personality, substance use, distress turned outward.
And women have higher rates of internalizing disorders.
Yes, mood disorders like depression, anxiety disorders, eating disorders, distress turned inward.
Why that pattern?
Explanations often involve coping styles, men externalizing stress, women internalizing. Also societal factors, power dynamics, economic disparity, women having less job autonomy, maybe being more affected by social network problems.
Suggesting that fostering self-regard and mastery would help both sexes.
Very likely, yes. Good mental health practices benefit everyone.
Let's look closer at anxiety and depression. Women have higher rates of specific phobias and agoraphobia.
Significantly higher, yes.
Yeah.
Especially fears like going out alone, being alone, or specific fears of animals, storms. No real difference in social phobia rates, though.
And depression, higher rates for women too. Is it biological?
Older studies found little biological support. A key psychological factor seems to be rumination. Women, when depressed, are more likely to dwell on negative thoughts, which worsens mood. Men are more likely to use distraction.
And that might stem from upbringing.
Quite possibly, yeah. Different coping strategies might be learned or encouraged differently.
Suicide shows a really stark, tragic difference.
It does. Females report more suicidal thoughts, make more attempts, and get diagnosed with depression more often.
But males die by suicide far more often.
About 4 times more likely in many places, and they show higher levels of suicidal intent.
Methods differ too.
Dramatically. Men use more violent, lethal methods like guns. Women more often use overdose or poison.
What are the potential reasons for this awful gap?
Socialization is a big one. Men expected to be independent, stoic, not show weakness or emotion. Women encouraged to share, seek support. Also, societal pressure on men as providers and higher rates of alcoholism in men are contributing factors.
Okay, schizophrenia. Equal likelihood, but different onset.
Yes, symptoms tend to appear earlier in men.
Why might that be?
Several ideas. Maybe differences in brain structure, different effects of sex hormones like estrogens and androgens, maybe exposure to toxins during adolescence for males. Neurodevelopmental theories suggest male brains might be more vulnerable prenatally or undergo excessive synaptic pruning later.
And the estrogen hypothesis.
That's the idea that estrogen might be protective. It can affect brain signaling, maybe inhibit psychotic symptoms. Fits with women sometimes having more symptoms when estrogen is lower, like during menopause or parts of the menstrual cycle. Estrogen treatment has even shown some benefits.
Lastly, autism spectrum disorder, ASD. Much higher rates diagnosed in males.
Globally, yeah. The U.S. data shows it's about 4 times more common in boys than girls aged 8.
But there's concern about underdiagnosis in females.
Definitely. The suspected ratio of undiagnosed cases might be closer to 2.1 male to female, suggesting girls and women are being missed, disadvantaged getting support.
Why might it be missed? The extreme male brain theory.
That's one idea, ASD as an extreme of typical male cognitive profiles, strong on systemizing, weaker on empathizing. Fits why males with ASD often score high on systemizing tests.
But female presentation is different. They camouflage more.
Often, yes. Symptoms can be less noticeable. Females with ASD are often better at coping socially, masking or camouflaging to fit in, but this effort itself is thought to cause significant internal distress for them, whereas males might show more external social issues.
And the female protective effect hypothesis.
That suggests females might need a larger genetic hit, more mutations to actually develop autism compared to males, could contribute to the lower diagnosed rates.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Personality, emotion, cognition, behavior, mental health.
It's a huge landscape.
Yeah.
And the big takeaway really has to be the complexity, right?
Absolutely. These differences, where they exist, are rarely simple. It's always this intricate dance between biology, development, culture.
And separating those threads is incredibly difficult. Even researchers who focus on biology acknowledge social factors are crucial.
And the research itself is always evolving, sometimes offering conflicting views. It's not about finding a simple nature or our nurture answer.
Never. It's always nature and denurture interacting in complex ways.
So we really hope this deep dive has given you, our listener, a richer, maybe more nuanced view on this whole topic.
Understanding these differences, and maybe why they exist, feels pretty important for just navigating the world, for fostering understanding.
Definitely. It pushes us past simple stereotypes.
So here's something to think about. Given how tangled up biology, development, and culture are in all this,
What does that mean for how you think about things like education or social policy or even just your everyday interactions?
yeah, how can knowing about this complexity help us move beyond those rigid boxes and really appreciate the diversity that exists both between men and women and within each group, too?